Remote. Money money. Also, go to the last. You do frustration. Namo manjo shiri, namo so shiri, namo dama shiri soha. Namo manjo shiri, namo so shiri, namo dama shiri soha. Namo manjo shiri, namo so shiri, namo dama shiri soha. Toge chona la jangcho bado dange gyabso che toge chonye gebe chona ge chola benje sangye choba sho sangye chodang toge chona la jangcho bado dange gyabso che toge jinso gebe chona ge chola benje sangye choba sho sangye chodang toge chona la jangcho bado dange gyabso che toge jinso gebe chona ge chola benje sangye choba sho sangye chodang toge chona la jangcho Bado Dandi Gazuchi, Dagi Jizogi Bezonagi, Rola Benja Sange Chubasho, Sange Judan Zogi Chunala, Janju Bado Dandi Gazuchi, Dagi Jizogi Bezonagi, Rola Benja Sange Chubasho, Sange Judan Zogi Chunala, Janju Bado Dandi Gazuchi, Dagi Jizogi Bezonagi, Rola Benja Sange Chubasho, Sange Judan Zogi Chunala, Janju Bado Dandi Gazuchi, Dagi Jizogi Bezonagi, Rola Benja Sange Chubasho, Sangye Judan Sogi Junala, Janjo Bado Dande Gazuji, Dage Jinzogi Bezonangi, Jola Benje Sangye Juba, Yogi Joshi Meko Jan, Rali Shini de Gembadi, Sangye Shindo Mide Uaye Jogi Nanda Shina Juba, Shu, Itan Guru Rana Menala Kandi Yataya. All sentient beings have been our mothers, and all sentient beings have been our mothers for numberless times. And they are very kind. They are as kind as the mothers of this life. Even though all kind mothers sentient beings want happiness and do not want suffering, however, due to not knowing the objects of abandonment and of adoption properly, they only create a karma that bring forth the result of suffering. In our minds, sincerely generate loving kindness towards all kind mothers sentient beings, thinking, how nice if all kind mothers sentient beings have happiness. May all kind mothers sentient beings have happiness. I will cause all kind mothers sentient beings to have happiness. Lama, please bless me to be able to do so. Next, please strongly generate compassion to all suffering mother sentient beings, thinking, how nice if 3 doors of all suffering mother sentient beings were free of all adversities. May 3 doors of all suffering mother sentient beings be free of all adversities. I will cause 3 doors of all suffering mother sentient beings to be free of all adversities. Lama, please bless me to be able to do so.
코어는 예술을 동아리 도인이 쓰다 보면 이게 예랑아 보스. 당 예랑아 보제 대디네 가서 한다 봐도 산지지 공부하는 게 이거거든요. 아니 이거를 쓰다 요즘에 한다 봐도 산지라 여기 그래서 이제 프로젝트 때 산지지 공부하는 거지. 저는 이제 또 참 있어.
Next, please strongly cultivate bodhicitta. First, we ask ourselves, who should take the responsibility to free all mother sentient beings from the sufferings of three lower realms and of full samsara? I should take the responsibility to free all mother sentient beings from the sufferings of three lower realms and of full samsara. But I do not have the ability to do so now. Only those who have achieved perfect complete enlightenment have the ability to do so. Therefore, for the sake of all sentient beings, by all means, I want to become Buddha.
이제 통지전도 상지지 공부하다 보면 여기 있는 공부받는 당연히가 다 이치로 모습이 넘어지 있었다. 그 최단계에서 이게 모두 공부하는 거 세로 지금 대단히 çalış으세요. 당연히가 다 이치로 대대 도지급 도지체는 거부지 되지 대대의 사건이 통지는 좀 있습니다.
Next, we cultivate all-encompassing yoga mind, that our aspiring conventional bodhicitta that thinks, for the sake of all sentient beings, I want to become Buddha. This bodhicitta transform into a mundis at one's heart. And next is ultimate bodhicitta, that is one's mind becoming in oneness with emptiness, that all phenomena are lacking of inherent existence. This bodhicitta transform into a white 5-pronged vajra on top of the mundis. Next, we meditate on emptiness, that I neither exist intrinsically one with, nor intrinsically different from the aggregates. Thus, I do not exist intrinsically.
예수 파신 두두는 것보다 빠바시는 인진저 처를 컨텐츠 관리는 이제 개체물에 대한 파시도 많이 있습니다. sometimes.
So it's very important to infuse the practicing of 6 perfections with our practice. When we join puja and when we do and we recite our prayers and whatever practice that we do, is very important to infuse it with the practice of 6 perfections.
더 관리성을 방법에서 제와 제가 통로는 다다바도 사비 고수지 사비 계자다 그런 의미가 들어와 그들이 있는 가지고 지점이 되는 거라 이렇게 다 퇴바 상바 뭔가 아니 상공에서 반드시 제고 이 자진이나 이 신체기 체도 방이 사도서 동시에 보지 이렇게 좀 대상이 아니죠. 당와서 또 신바다 거 동시에서 개체 신바다 들어와 신비년이 여러면 동시들 동시도 비다고 여면 신바야고 참 동시들 나가 어떤 짓이서 당와서 지신이 계신가 지와 체로 도망하는 대답하다 했어 이자이나 예자정도 드리면서 그때 지신이 계신가 이제 예바 퇴바 예바 상바 bomba 간비지 체가이나 근데 대의 자와대 이게 신체기 체도 방이 사람이 동시에 휴치지 상관이지.
So the first one is generosity. So to think that all the roots of virtue that I've accumulated since beginningless time, and especially the roots of virtue that I'm going to accumulate through this, through listening to the Dharma teachings, reflecting on the Dharma teachings, and meditate on the Dharma teachings for these 2 hours. So all the root of virtue that I have accumulated and that I'm going to accumulate, I'm going to give this for all sentient beings. I'm going to give this to all sentient beings. So this is the first practice, the generosity. So whether the giving or the generosity becomes a good practice of giving or not, it depends on our minds of giving. So strongly cultivate these minds of giving, that whatever roots of virtue that I have already accumulated and that I'm accumulating and I will accumulate to all sentient beings. Dedicate these roots of give these roots of virtue to all sentient beings.
That is the so choosing Nigerian. That choosing Nigerian Kanda is what gauges was its street, Yanela Song. That's the young song Kanda to Kanda choosing Nigerian Kanda, Linga Nijin Baksapa, Sawan in the Chumajiba. That Kanda, Mark Jin Chamala Sabine, Sawan for Nijin Pakawa. That leads to German Malas, the Canadian summer, the not meeting about summer, that during which German choosing Nigerian Sawani, the non meeting about what the Mondo at the phone is at the deposit, the trees of occasion, Ponset or Ponset. This was the not meeting about that choosing Nigerian Sawani, with the Majiba, who is a day at Tanjana, Ponset, which is
Then again, for these 2 hours of class, so I will abandon my physical and verbal negativities. For example, physically we harm others, or verbally we tell lies, we lie to others. So for these 2 hours, I will abandon all these negativities by not letting it manifest. So even if I cannot abandon these negativities for a long time, so at least for these 2 hours, I will stop it from manifesting. So this practice is a practice of morality, and morality is mainly about the minds of abandonment.
That teaches him as a Sevadua. That's what Sevade, Yanesongan, that was a choosing Niggerilla, or choosing Niggerilla Bay, that Kanda Nesan Pons, that was a Landry, never some Gumbas, David Tola, Kandi, leader said, the Sena Bay, Kani Kandi Jumba in a case of Andolima, Andolin, Sutubashi, Chigi, that is some kind of sitting on it.
The next is the practice of patience. So the way to think about it is, for these 2 hours, so when I listen to the teachings, when I reflect on the teachings and I meditate on the teachings, so whatever physical or mental hardships that will occur, I will embrace it. So you embrace the hardships, physical hardship and also mental hardships when you listen, reflect, and meditate on the teachings. So this is the practice of patience.
That teaches Shiva Zindua. That's in Tibet, Manzo choosing Niggerilla, choosing Niggerilla, and Diggy, can be Landry Balabella, nearby somebody, Booby, Diggy, 내상 보수지야기 개와 상분의 미지 중심 생지기 변샤이시도 리베 내상 보수지야라 개와 상분들이 중심에서 생을 도와 생을 조이도 대간다 전주성 민사 어떤지 상황이나 다 전주신 연인 상황과
And next is the practice of joyous effort. So again, for these 2 hours, so wherever that I'm going to listen to the teachings, I'm going to reflect on the teachings, and I'm going to meditate on the teachings that is about the stages of the path. So I consider myself very fortunate because I'm able to do this for the sake of all sentient beings. So you generate a delight of doing so. So this delightful mind then is considered as the joyous effort.
다 나와 대지 상대들와 상대년에 다 상대지 남녀 상대하는 것이 단 진짜 주제는 그러나 주제는 그러나 그래서 진짜 나마 내상 무엇을 지야기 근데 취기 다 지시자 한다 지시 가리는 디지털 모두 다 현답에 남도다 나이다 소소의 남기 예가다 소소의 예고 예가라서 우리 남도다 나이와도 무슨 완전 뭐 취업 것도 집에 취업이라 상황마다 신달은 매선 리집에 소소의 세나 상황이 tanto 바이나 다 understanding 많이 괜찮고 좋아.
Next is the practice of meditative stabilization or meditative concentration. So for these 2 hours, so other than the topics that I'm listening to, or whatever the teachings that I'm listening to, that I reflect and meditate on. So other than this topic, I'm not going to be distracted by something else. For example, my family or about my work. So I'm not going to be distracted by others. And then I focus my mind on the topics. So that focus is considered a meditative concentration.
다지 이지스 또 시러지 년들와 다 시러도 년에 가서 주신 민기 생각을 가더와 내상 보수 간지 시바이나 근데 최대게 견서 최대 그 이나 그 처음에 간도 쭈투지 걸 레버 시바지 레버 시바지 지금 있어와 최대 때에 지시 창조 마시바이나 이때 당연히 카시티 레버지 시바지 지금 있어 간다 단다 시비도 와 시럽지 년에 좀 와 맞아 지진이 정말 앞에 유식 가르도리나 리백한다 치다 더 간디나 더 레버 시험지 지금 이상 그 들리지 상이 바꾼 인바이나 때 맞아 여러분 상과
So the next is the practice of wisdom. Again, for these 2 hours that I'm going to listen to the teachings, I'm going to reflect on the teachings, I'm going to meditate on the teachings. So whatever teachings that I heard, I try my best to understand properly the meaning and also the words. So even though if I cannot understand all the whole teachings, but I will try my best to understand however much I can. So this knowing or this understanding is considered a part of the practice of wisdom.
그 대지에서는 생지 탄지된데 상지지 공부하다가 대지를 다 간다 전주 난전에 보면 세계 제는 되게 생겨나 펜버드니 인사 투스쿠는 보시지에서
To set motivation for the sake of all sentient beings, I want to become Buddha. For this purpose, I'm going to listen to the commentary on the holy teachings and practice accordingly in order to benefit sentient beings.
Oh yeah, thank you. That the ring of the Kanda is so pretty to go there. That was a Jimmy Chipping money at Zochi. Just a part of the symbol to there, doing a good she, Jedo Jimbani. What the kitchen should be chower. That was a Jedo Jimbani Tanda, negative missing Jeba Mebachita, Jela Masan, that this was that was a turned out to do by a use of Pashi to go, the kitchen. That thing was a top of Nishima in that soya. General so candy chair, so the Isha candy to do by now. Pashi to go and that and Yanima, some of Pandaji, Javaina. That dinner general was a chance on video, who know that Karina chance on dinner someday. The kitchen which that was a top of it. That sounds in a Jeba, sounds in a diva sometime. Pashi to go. That the dimmer, Jidin, it is a very raw. Tapakanda Tapashi is a good year. Also, you don't know the good yet.
So we are going to start the great scope or great capable being, great scope of being. So, and in this great scope, the main practice is the practice of 6 perfections, and also 4 ways of gathering disciples, and also 2 stages: the stage, generation stage, and also completion stage. So the last point, generation stage and completion stage, we are going to discuss it in detail when we come to the tantric related class. So these 6 perfections is very important. So whenever we attend a teaching, or whenever we do our prayers, or whatever virtuous activities that we engage in, is very important to conjoin it with 6 perfections. So we will do these meditations all the time. So whenever we have class, etc., then we are going to do these meditations. So sometimes we will do it in an extensive way, and sometimes we will do it in the brief way.
태상 곳이 야마다 왔어야지. 그래서 전부 최바디 가리네 딜라파이 자니. 소소 가리네 딜라 82가지 있잖아요. 자니 소소 기샤 간이면 디가 뭐봐 82가 냐네 자니. 약간 로 좋아. 들린 로그에 되게 제보시라 참고는 이양아서 82가 냐네서 팔로스 메시지 제보야시. 다 신당 가서 가르치 바이나 82가 냐네 맵서다라시. 들리 인차 무시고 말이 무시고 좋아. That is all when it's a chicken on the jail, the shimmy.
Yeah, so some may think that so whatever prayers that I do and whatever virtuous activities I do, then I do it separate from the practice of 6 perfections. So it kind of like this practice of 6 perfections is staying alone. So it doesn't relate the virtuous activities that I do daily, for example, or the daily prayers. So this is not a correct understanding. So it's very important. We always talk about the importance of listening, reflecting, and contemplations, right? So even listening to the Dharma teachings, we can combine it, and we should combine it with the practice of 6 perfections as well. So if we think that our daily activities, such as reciting prayers or doing the virtuous activities, is separate from the practice of 6 perfections, that I have to do the practice of 6 perfections especially. So I have to do it separately, and I have to do it, allocate a time to do the 6 perfections, then that is not the correct way of understanding it. So we must know how to practice Dharma correctly.
That page Shabaina, I think in the Chichen and the Pashi to the Yanich, some Pani, Daniel Vichesarwa. That deep color, nothing in that Sonicala, that's also the Namuje, Ure, to vote to what the Lichi, Echa Kashi, Sindam, that is Lavaina, Ketamaina, and Lanza, Ma, the singing about my late Vaina, the Pashi to the Yanit, Sevignan, somewhere Matata, Roa, Katuma Lindy, Yan Lichi Jabana, Shubandawich. In the Jebaina, that was a choosing nigger, usually was on the choosing nigger, on labor. We did answer, but Silly Wata, Lanza, Jaban and Batia Jebaina, that's Vivian and Songudua, 세비냐니 마사마 세기마리 this 수리냐니 도 레고 말로와 어다도 림바기 찌찌련 튀네 다시 창조 말레와 차도 로와 우무스 하고야 그 차도 로와.
Yeah, so it's very important to conjoin the practice of 6 perfections, especially in these 2 hours of listening to the Dharma teachings. So at the beginning of these sessions, then we kind of meditate on it, and then kind of like commit to conjoin these 2 hours of listening to the Dharma teachings with the practice of 6 perfections. So in these 2 hours of listening to Dharma teachings, then if any one of your family members, for example, or your friends or your kids, for example, if they say something to you and then you say some bad words to them, then or even you physically beat them or harm them in these 2 hours, then it already it is against the commitment that we made at the beginning of this class. So at the beginning of these sessions, and I also mentioned that even I cannot abandon those negative actions for a long time, at least for these 2 hours, I commit or I promise or I try my best to abandon these negative actions, right? So if you have already thought so, and you make such a commitment, and if someone were to say bad things to you and then you also respond with bad words or even physically you beat them or physically harm them, then you already you do not keep your commitment already, right? So you lost the practice of patience, then you also lost the practice of morality. So if you understand these connections between the 6 perfections, then you will understand that if you were to do so, then you lost the practice of 6 perfections altogether.
Jimbi Pashi so Chidang was Jimbi Pashi so Jimbi Pashi Sinang Paro the Chintan Sanji Mother Yomari. Chidang Jimbi Pashi so that Roa Jimbi Pashi, Sutin Pashi, Subi Pashi, Pashi to the low the Sanji Kuni Jiji Pashi to Smart. Tang Anso Danda Karachi was not Jimbi Paro the Shiba de Chida Jimbi Nanaja, Data just in Jimbi Nanaja. The Jimbi Nani, Chene, the Jimbi Paro the Shiba Chowdi, the Sanji Kumatower. Roa, or Dandang of Chidam, Passions, Itaudua. Chidami, Tavodina, Nita, told about the Jimbi Pashin to this Pashin to the Sanji Salamata Yomachina. Dangan the Pashin to book did a Jesus Timbaya, the Jimbi Nani Abochin, Jimbi Paro Shiba, sitting Nani Abochin, sitting Paro Shiba. Oh, this sweeping Yanni Aboriginal city, Yanni Parochima. What that the Digi to a change. What does this sound now?
So at the beginning of these sessions, I also mentioned that the practice of 6 perfections, right? So for example, the perfections of morality and the perfections of generosity. So these perfections such as the perfection of generosity only exist in the mind stream of a Buddha. So even though we say that we are how to cultivate the perfections of morality, or we cultivate the perfections of generosity. So what we are trying to cultivate is we practice cultivate the practice that is approximate the perfections of generosity. So we are trying to practice in order to achieve the perfections of generosity. So that is what it meant by practicing the perfection of generosity. So we are practiced in order to achieve the perfection of generosity. So that only exists in the perfection of generosity only exists in the mind stream of Buddha. So what we are trying to do is to practice, or we are trying to approximate our practice with the perfection of generosity.
That's not a Tandang also as a Jimbi Pashi in Yanni was a son of the town with it. Jadang was a Jimbi Pashi Sawatla, the GD Mambo, GD Mambo. Tandang Jadang Utonin was a Pashi to Yanni, Jana Mami, Roro, the Jumatus, Sugar Roa. Then I let Mato Kali, can it Pashi to Yanni, Jiri, Jadang Roa. Or that under Pashi to work in Yanni, Sawachi Tambo, among us, Duty Chance and Sawachi, a geographic picture. And then I pay Shavina, Jimbi Pashi Yanni. 선 당도 가서 집이 파시나로 다 간다 짐바들 먼저 취지 짐바 문집이 짐바 상지 짐바 선다 나한테 파시 주고 3만 유로와 되게 나한테 3만 유로 다 단단 가서 취지 짐바 차고 그런 나서 상당하더와 취지 짐바 다 취지 짐바 써야 되는 것도 지나 니가 전부 심지로와 니가 전부 심지래 어때 나서 때 게이자와 때 취 제와 체라 토마메 반에 다다 봤어 게이자와 때 신식이 체라 당주사 짐바들와 어때 되게 땅와라 나서 또는 가르상 당주는 동세의 빼하고 주고 동세 이 땅이 계자 지난 계자 체출 계산 말이 지난 동세의 야래 훨씬 인비하고 차마차다 또 대체적 동세의 차고 그러와 동세의 차고 동세 야구지만이나 수도기 자 오바 강 신바탕 바나다 니가 첨부 되리 동세의 전주 있어야 시럽지 신비토니 되리 동세 레바이나 자 오바 보이나 니가 첨부 간다 차사 그러와 어디 성사 니 간다 다 당보마 디디디디지는 그래서 간다 82가 그냥에 차지 그래서学应该说nội dung về 간다 쇼로가 지지지나 지지나 그래서 간디 개조이나 와군에 배 게셔 춘주지 배 간다 많이 찾진다 와이나 82로 받자야 리지권의 차지 피와이나 또 82로 받자는 성다 따고서 이지권에 배는 대박 거디 인디 제야 그러와 달라만 봐 인디 제야 대박 거디 되는 그거 지가지와 어떤지 가디 무슨지 차와 게 차와 간디지 제바이나 82걸 받지 않고요. 양이야. 어따 네 개체부 뒤차고 와.
Yeah, so just now, like for example, the first is the practice of the perfection of generosity, right? So in relation to this perfection of generosity, there are so many things that we can think about in relation to this practice. So we can think about it in a very extensive way, and we can also think about it in a very brief way as well. So however brief way that we think about in relation to the practice of generosity is very important to make it enrich with the practice of six perfections, to enrich with the practice of six perfections. Yeah. So and then slowly we improve from that. So like for example, when we talk about generosity, then I only mentioned it in a brief way, right? So if we were to divide this generosity, then it can be a giving of dharma, it can be a giving of protections, it can be a giving of material or goods as well. So what we think about just now, so whatever roots of virtue that I have accumulated since beginningless time and accumulating and will accumulate through these dharma sessions, then I give it to all sentient beings. So then to attend these teachings with such minds of giving. So if we able to do so, like what we mentioned just now, then even this listening to the Dharma teachings, it becomes very powerful. So whether our practice of generosity is good or not, it depends on our minds of giving. So if we have these minds of giving, then it becomes a good practice of generosity. So so even just drinking one cup of tea, then if we able to conjoin it with the practice of generosity that I mentioned just now, then it becomes very powerful. It becomes a great root of virtue. So even we listen to the Dharma teachings, just one verse of it, or even when we do our daily prayers, or even if we just recite Om Mani Padme Hum one time, if we conjoin it with the practice of generosity, then together with other virtuous activities, like for example prostrations, or even we accumulate the roots of virtue by remembering the kindness of Lama, and we are remembering the good qualities of Lama, then we generate faith and respect to Lama. So such roots of virtue, if we conjoin it with the practice of generosity, then it becomes a great practice. Thus, it's very important to conjoin whatever virtuous activities with such practice of six perfections.
파시족의 ஞான의 로가지 많이 배우면서 내한테 ஞான의 로가지 인딩에 생각이 내가 이거로 간다 ஞान의 제당 마시 봐이나 다 많이 진짜마이나 냥리 로가지다. 야 82개 냥리지 로가지 이 받든지 간다 하마고마이나 든지 차가 내가 열어와.
Yeah. So some if they do not understand the proper way to practice, then we think that reciting Om Mani Padme Hum is a different practice from the practice of 6 perfections, for example, the practice of generosity. Then this shows that we do not know the proper way to practice. So, and there is a great danger that we do not have that correct understanding. We think that these two practices are different.
답변 샤바이나 많이 빼면 홍서 되는 바이나 내가 가서 패션 좀 많이 제가 다 소소이나 나지 많이 쓰어도 다 미스터가 기는 단식으로 와. 많이 쓰어도 내가 배에 쳔바 희에타와 쳔바 지야면죠. 많이 쉬비지 있어 봐. 배 제 마토를 쉬비나 람사신다. 다 지시에서는 쳔바 같이 지 메시반다고 시 많이 들어와. 이게 됨디죠. 다 되게 배에서 와서 뺐다 랍지 쳔보. 다 패션 두가 Yeah,
just like this Om Mani Padme Hum, this mantra itself, it contains the practice of all teachings. So, and this Mani mantra is, I mean, anyone also know how to recite this Om Mani Padme Hum. So, because it is so easy to recite and it is so easy to remember, and then once you remember it, then you will not forget it easily. So, it has such good qualities. So then it's very important to conjoin these recitations of Mani mantra, even just for one time, with the practice of 6 perfections.
덴디기 상황이 땅바이나 장주비 생기 세베토네 덴디베 동세 신바 이거 전부 되고 와 진리 파신 안에 대해서
심지 탐지 체도나 상해 고방기 체도
이 체도 봐
계자데
계자도 봤더니 이 땅의 인세 덴디 동세 덴디지 풀토네 만데바나다 덴디 꼴로도 장주비 생기 생사 와 장주비 생기 생사를 가리네 다 많이 담보 무슨 많이 배샤를 파시고 많이 안에 제가 와 이 여러 식으로 많이 되는 방법으로 와 이 전화서 봐 티키를 봐
Yeah, so we always recite Om Mani Padme Hum, right? That is very important. When we are about to recite Om Mani Padme Hum, then we conjoin it, or we think about the practice of 6 perfections. We conjoin it with the practice of 6 perfections. So the roots of virtue that I'm going to accumulate, and then I give it to sentient beings, and then I dedicate it for the state of enlightenment. So I'm going to give these roots of virtue that I'm going to accumulate to all sentient beings. So if we able to think about it before we recite, right before we recite Om Mani Padme Hum, then these recitations of Mani mantra is infused with Bodhichitta, and is also infused with the practice of perfection of generosity.
that is 맞아. 나서 저거 많이 되니까지라 나 가만아 쭉 같이 인도고나 많이 친구 진도고나 친구 찍인 대신 우리라고 와. 나들이 아무 신비 파시 상황다 예다 배출인들라 나 많이 간다 친구 찍으리라 정말 친구 찍으리라 대신이나 니베 추진도 삐다보시 많이 된다라 예 신기 배 소송 뭐라 도 슈바이나 니 팔레 맞대사 된디 좋아 렌티기미 리치 잡아가 봤티기미 수치네 바 간지로나 니들 바 치네 바 주고 싸니네 몰라서 근데 뽕아 리나게 잡아대 삐다보시 공부 인사 뭐 된디 상황 딱 많이나 다 많이 된데서 내가 수지 파신 안에 상황을 다게 뭐
And when we recite Mani mantra, so however long that you wish to recite, for example, 5 minutes or even 1 mala of Om Mani Padme Hum. So while you are reciting it, then you also can conjoin it with the practice of morality. So, for example, while I'm reciting it, so if others hit me with a stone, or even others say some bad things to me, I do not respond with negative actions. So I do not harm me back. I do not say bad things to them. So I guard my body and speech from the negative activities. So by we keep our morality pure. We properly keep our morality by not responding with harm while we are reciting a mantra. And this is how we conjoin the recitations of money mantra with the practice of morality.
That kanda money jingo jindense rila. They kanda swimming honest. That money the jingo chi the matsani parula pe so listen la kani kandi chumba ne tang de lesa sa chirwa. Be chinji nyamba she ban chamunyam se ba ma da se ba de nyane la mabu she urwa. Oh da jina leaders chen la pe kani kandi chuna ne tang de le sa. Zawani moto da desirila chibu je abu da na kamba nas no ne tang de le. Urwa. Dama desa den trouble in ani kani chumba ne ele setu ba moto ba se go chetu ba. Urwa. Oh tindi echi chingi sa tindi da money desa la kanda subi nyane chang urwa.
So then we also can conjoin the money recitations of money mantra with the practice of patience. So while we are reciting money mantra, so whatever physical hardships or mentally hardships that occurs, then I will embrace it. So I embrace all the physical and mental hardships while I'm reciting a money mantra. So for example, if you are sitting on cushions and the cushions is very hard, then it gives you some backache or etc., then you embrace the hardship. Then if you're walking around, then if you while reciting the mantra, and then if your legs are pain, then you also embrace the hardships. So if you're embracing hardships for the sake of practicing, then that is how you conjoin the recitations of mantra with the practice of patience.
The money jingo jindense kanda ska combine na so chum do sa sa. Supol pe dolo chang de na ni tele se go je to sa. Da khatu barwa ye habu sa ta na so wa. Ye ka kamba na ba mo na ba ina tele pa se go je to sa. Ndi man da jingo ji ma sa ba. Da kama shinga ni so ni wa. Da ndi sa ta na da kanda su zheng yang de zheng yang de chang de wa.
Yeah, so if you commit yourself to embrace the hardships when you recite the money mantra, if you're thirsty, then you also embrace the hardship, and if you are cold, then you also embrace the hardships, and if you your knees pain give you pain and etc., then you also embrace the hardships. Then your recitation, then your recitations of money mantra is conjoined with the practice of patience.
다들이 전이 들어와 시바 전이 많이 증거 진단을 가다 많이 돼야 되는데 간다 신신지 전샤시다 니 많이 된지 집에 대하게 고가 사무 된지 총수 신지 전샤시 된지 고가야 보시 총수 신랑 도와줘 소라 신랑 도와지고 들어와 가와다 도와지고 들어와 되도서 많이 되어 있나 다 전이 상고 전이 양면 상고 와 전이 좀 뭐다 간다 개와 또 있는 거 스텔로 와.
Then the next one is to conjoin the recitations of money mantra with joyous effort. And joyous effort is about mind delights in virtue. So when you recite the money mantra, then you think that I'm going to, so I'm going to accomplish the welfare of other sentient beings. I'm reciting in order to accomplish the welfare of other sentient beings. Then you happily recite the money mantra. Then you conjoin the recitations of money mantra with the practice of joyous effort.
다 많이 연습이랑 증거 진단서리라 간다. 소소게 상디지 파신 양내 차야 돼. 그 소소게 배 많이 되어도 배 진리스라 배 소와 세지도 때문에 세 많이 봐. 세 남도다 나야와도 마소와. 그 소소 많이 내살 배다 신뢰 녀도 배 신뢰 영화 진리스와. 어떤 진리스 그게 상탄이 많이 돼. 해배 다 나게 레가래 배 내군 레가래 근데 반난동화도 누구들 나서 세 바까. 하여튼 지금도 나 산디 냐는 상무도 되니 더바이나 누구도 산 소 하고 바지로 하고니 파까니 되지 소 왔다 바이나 당원에 산디 바신 냐는 상무로.
Yeah, so then next is we conjoin the reciting money mantra with the practice of meditative concentration. So when you recite the mantra, then your mind single-pointedly focus on making requests to Chenrezig. So your mind focus on Chenrezig itself and do not get distracted by other things other than generosic. So, for example, if your mind get distracted and think about your house, think about your family, think about your house, or think about your work, then you should aware that your mind has already distracted, and then you should stop this distraction mind and then focus on the object of meditations. So if you do so, then you conjoin the recitations of Mani Mantra with practice of meditative concentration.
Tuba shiro da di pendire kanda ta mani chingo jing yense riga la susu ta mani de we ta ne pion lab chi mo che ba shi mo wa ta mani de la na zu chui tang ji de ning bo de na ji de re sa de ge mani de pion ya bu ji shi ba ji wa pion ya bu ji shi ba o de lang do ji ne su ya bu ji shi ba ina wa ta shiro ji pa shi na ne chang wo wa mani de pion da wa de man de ba ina de su su le gense kar yu me 어때 개와사케요 말아 만져 봐이나 다 많이 나 많이 나서도 피해 납치면 힘 많이 써 상지 주류 지지 이도 님부터 뒤져야 이마 생산 다 된다 많이 나게 피해 납치면 예바 힘만데 이시로 하시는 거 다 와.
So again, when we recite the Mani Mantra, then we can conjoin it with the practice of wisdom as well. So we understand the great or extensive benefits of reciting Mani Mantra. So because the Mani Mantra is the essence of 84,000 teachings, is the essence of all Buddha's teaching. So the benefits is immeasurable, is unimaginable as well. So when we recite Mani Mantra and with such understanding, then this is how we conjoin the recitations of Mani Mantra with the practice of wisdom.
다 된다. 나서 치개와 간지 제바이나 당와도 드림이 비시에 전세는 와도 제비 정복이 다 가는 걸 말이요. 다 제비 정복이 아닌데 가시면 와도 제비 중요한 리스트 당원도 다도 좀 와서 때 맞아 시작부터 제비 정복이 아닌데 그러와 제비 중요 가서 맞아 민원도 시에가 간다 렌데다 장도다 그래서 때 치와미다 보다 덴데다 그래서 된다 사망한테 간다 제비 중요 가서 제바 시에 이러와 다 뜻은 상황이 아니 시작부터 내가 내우디 다 아니 시작부터 내우디 다 간다 네 제비 전부 갈래나 다 아니 가리는 다 란치볼라서 란치볼배 상황에 파까고 다 제비 전부 아니 갈래우디 다 란치볼 치데 리셔 간디지 두바나 란치볼 치데 부야데 파 로데 파 도도 쳐 다배 현지 쳐 장이 니가라 피야지 리지 상당으로 와다 어디 상당으로 와서 다 단단 가서 니 간다 지속 퍼지도 안에도 막 쉬게 되세요. 이만한 정도는 뭐 쉬어 인지를 주고 간디 계절 샤워 내자 내셔 간디지 두면 퍼지도 안에 막 상당히 어디 기자 통과시 이바이나 나는서 때 왜니 전에 지속 퍼지도 안에 찬상하지 제도는 다 비용 간디죠. 비용 상좀 잡는다. 그거 최고 뭐
Yeah, so because we are now at the beginning of the great scope. So I have to mention about I should have to emphasize that. So whatever path of the the path of small scope and the path of medium scopes, they are the preliminary practice and they are the foundations for us to move on to the great scope. So, for example, the practice of thinking about, reflecting on the cause and effect, and the practice of refuge, and the practice of, like, for example, the 12 things of dependent arising. Those are the foundations upon which we practice the great scope. So whatever roots of virtue that we do, for example, reciting prayers or reciting mantra, then we do not think about oneself. So it's very important to, in order to practice the great scope, it's very important to stop thinking about oneself when we engage in any virtuous activities, and we should think about benefiting oneself and others, benefiting both. So this is what we should think about. So we should stop thinking for oneself, and then we should think about benefiting oneself and others. So if we able to conjoin or whatever roots of virtue with the practice of 6 perfections, imagine the benefits that we will receive. It will be inconceivable, and then it will be very extensive.
我到这种这个迷信的话，拍拖呀，到多过我些把看的起呢，我从慢慢的就是拍心这个年龄的生活去，就是个被差异比吧呢，对吧？去，差异这块的过了几百呢，确定的，就那个过了几百呢，你拍心这个年龄上去，我在等的什么，认真的强上了都上当有了，我拍心就得怕老死嘛，下话去，但所说的给这干的给小干的这个呢，这拍心这个年龄的出现呢。你结巴呢，我当晚的站里的，过去了，我说老中去过去是吧？可惜大娘的结不进的，其他行为没卡用是吧？马先把送在，那娘的接到的嘛，先把送在，那我们就是忙忙，写出是吧？我说被，你开把个娘的接到的，你不个娘的接到是，我们忙不写出是吧？
Yeah, so sometimes also we recite money mantra for our friends or for our family members, or we do prostrations, or even we circumambulate monastery, for example. It's very important to conjoin it with the practice of 6 perfections. So if we do so, then it becomes a practice, and it worth practicing with. It worth practicing combining the money mantra, reciting money mantra with the 6 perfections. So we should not treat the practice of 6 perfections and the practice of reciting mantra, for example, as separate. We should conjoin it. So if not, then some people might think that, oh, I want to practice 6 perfections, but I do not know how to practice the 6 perfections. Then this is the way. So as I mentioned just now, this is the way how you conjoin the practice of 6 perfections with any virtuous activities that you engage. So, and in the past, I also mentioned about the way a wise one or the way a foolish one practice. So there is a big difference between their way of practice, a wise one or a foolish ones. So this is how we should practice according to the wise one.
当我是拍起这个年龄的嘛，他妈的叫我的长久的生意生意端的，朋友的长久的生意生意端的，那个的，那长久的生意生意端的，那你小干的这个的，那你把全部那全部学过来是吧？那长久的生意生意，对了，我说做生意写了不是我对不过的，那就是我的人吧，就是学一个，我得给钱的。
That's right. Yeah. So whatever is also very important to to engage in the virtuous activities motivated by bodhicitta.
那等于现在看着，那等于你都起来，那看到我说基本穷人人，那人又告诉我说拖些态度把它拖差的给下去呢，你得这种恐怕，人家这种恐怕拖的，基本人是吧？基本人个，等于拖差的，对，人家这种嘛，你就这种恐怕拖的，别。等于这了，别把还讲西别电话的修全部需要的，你电话的修全部的搞不了别，他讲的200下来都是这样，这边上级了别就是不需要他了，看的，有着吧？上级了就是不他了，这他说的，他讲的说上级要么的，上级了就是不他了，这他会就是的，你这人家这就恐怕到那边西等于就是说还讲电话修全部有个，是吧？电话修全部，你是200下。200下来就不哈呢，哈巴来的看到上级都要嘛，3万几个就是个是，可能被这就把他们的牛母的帮助，牛母的帮助过的，你呢牛母的给把下的帮助要嘛是吧？把下的帮忙都得上级嘛对吧？对呢，俺说背下边呢，背路上刚着不进呢，背的是电车他可能了解么的，背的嘛电车是吧？背的学了嘛电车呢，刚的那个背什么没法说对呀？背那个刚的那背个什么对不吧？我背个什么的，我得没法说对呀，那什么对呀对吧？我背的话电车他得哪些？牛母的帮菜的，那牛母个把下的没法说对呀。
Yeah, so we first we talk about the small scope, then we proceeded to the medium scope, right? So then, if one depends on the path and achieve the state of arhat, so be it the arhatships of solitary realizers or hearers, then when they achieve such arhatship, then they they experience the great bliss from the meditative concentration. So when they experience the great bliss from the meditative concentration, then they might stay in that meditative equipoise for eons and eons, enjoying the great bliss from the meditative concentration. So even though they have achieved the state of Arhat, however, they have not become a Buddha yet, so they haven't achieved the enlightenment yet. So because of enjoying the great bliss from the meditative concentration, then it prolongs their achievement of enlightenment. So why they haven't achieved the state of enlightenment is, even though they have already abandoned afflictions, so when they achieve the state of Arhat, they have already abandoned afflictions, right? However, they haven't abandoned the imprints of afflictions. So because of this reason, they haven't achieved the state of enlightenment, and they have to continue to practice. So the abandon the afflictions, but not yet abandon the imprints of afflictions, then the example is like this. So if you put incense sticks in a box, if you put incense in a box, and then if you take out the incense sticks, the smell, you still can smell the incense in the box, right? So you still have the sense of incense in the box. So that is the example to show that even though they have already abandoned afflictions, however, they haven't abandoned the imprints of afflictions.
Oh, that listens up. That on the answer to that Naji came, but certainly can't do this. It's a dish or can you do by the use of Pachi to win Yanni as a Jenny. Checklist, Mumaki Mambu should say that Kashi Tempa is the Jena, Tempa Soachi. That and then also Chindasawa, Koran is someone grow. That is okay. Do the song down to Vaina. I want to chip tune reading, Lojo Yabuchi, that given the Chibuka lay with the new song down Roina, Lunatani, and once Yanni chat, beat up Yabuchi, once Zibaji Masina, a demo, today, about demo Jib tuning today, was a demo thing. Then told us she done the Katia, told on Robuena, different royal demo chowers, demo chow, on the Tambuni Chunjaji at the Moroa, demo chow.
Yeah, so to those senior ones, and I've mentioned many times to you that it's very important to conjoin whatever roots of whatever virtuous activities that we engage with the practice of 6 perfections. So I have mentioned it many times in the past already. So this will serve as a reminder for all of you, and to those to those who listen it to the for the first time, then it's very important to conjoin the practice of 6 perfections with the virtuous activities that we do. So if we do so, then our practice will become a good one, a good quality one. So it's just like, and I mentioned just now, now we are at the beginning of the great scope, right? Then I also mentioned about the foundations of small scope and the medium scope as well. So on the basis or on the foundations of these two, then we engage in the practice of a great scope. So just like I'll say, if you want to build a house, then it's very important to lay very firm and stable foundations, right? Then on top of that, then we build houses and etc., or build more stories. So if you're able to do so, then the house or the buildings become very stable.
That the reason that Ganda, the wanted to do some Pachi Yanile, should be the Zena with this in Rua. That the reason that the Ganda, Chilonze, and the Pachi Yanni, Jedandi. Ni Chila Kanda, Mazupe, gets a condition, give a condition to Guena, and Dumban the Winanda, Choppy Gunanda, and Bumji Gunanda. This is someone I'm patient to be Yan and Sand, Condition who is in genuine to Atanta. What is it to Atandi? That is, and that's also the part to Atata, Kilage to budget. Some towns did Tambaina, the Tandan so. Taba, the Gesuto can't take your Karina. Chichialan, Timbu, and Timbu, Ya, Toma, Masamo, Vegetable Yanela, some of the time. They share that current at that time, some Vegetable Yanetaro, the US of the condition, Pembaina, the Temba Giameva, Majiba, the Yanni Chedan, so Taba, Senadia. They say that they would this was give a conditional answer, the Senate, 차도 이거와 뭐 등지 중반에는 이거 전부 쉬기로 하다 어서도 거리나와 어디지 개체 모르고.
Yeah, so this is the way we conjoin the practice of 6 perfections with whatever roots of virtue or virtuous activities that we do. So, you should think about it. So, when you are doing, before you do prostrations, or before you do meditations, or before you do your daily prayers, etc., is think about think about conjoining it with the practice of 6 perfections. It's very important to think in this way. So I've already explained to you how you conjoin it with the practice with conjoin it with the practice of 6 perfections. So think about it. Then anytime in the future, I will ask you, how do you conjoin your practice with the practice of 6 perfections? So for example, if some of you, then you might do 6 sessions. Then it's very important to conjoin it with the practice of 6 perfections. So always, if every time you do your 6 sessions, then you conjoin it, you think about conjoining it with the practice of 6 perfections, then you will not forget. You will always remember it, and whatever virtuous activities that you engage, then you would think about conjoining it with the practice of 6 perfections. So that is very important to do so, to habituate yourself. Habituate yourself with conjoining whatever roots of virtue that you do with the 6 perfection, practice of 6 perfections. Yeah. Okay, so there are 3 points concerning the training of the mind in the stages of the path of persons of great capacity. So these 3 points are how generating the minds of enlightenment is the only gateway to the Mahayana, how to generate that mind, and how to train in the conduct after generating the mind. So the first one talks about the gateway, the only gateway to the Mahayana. So as is necessary to enter the Mahayana, think about how it is to be entered. So there is no great vehicle apart from the Paramitayana and Mantrayana. So Mahayana is divided into 2, Mahayana Paramitayana and Mahayana Mantrayana. So there is no third vehicle in this Mahayana. So only these 2 vehicle in the Mahayana. So that is taught by the victor. So whichever of the 2 you may enter, the only gateway is Bodhichitta. So if we do not practice Paramitayana, there is no way that we can enter. There is no foundations for us to practice Mantrayana.
강이 뭘 주고 있는데 누구도 chanjusen fundamental 신도 갖게요. 그래서 다 80도 나는 가리냐면 용도는 간다 chanjusen 모두 대바 친구들이 누구도 chanjusen으로 chanjusen 모두 되게 신발서 하는 거 말이에요.
So whichever of the 2 you may enter, the only gateway is Bodhichitta, not something else. The only gateway is Bodhichitta.
다 chanjusen의 줄라까지 제바이나 다 티바치몰 주사 티바치몰 고 나오는 지사 간다로 다 티바치몰 마서 게트라고 지여바이나 chanjusen의 줄라 제보다 게트 나오는 다스 까만 나올래서다 까만 나올래서와 에 컴바 마서 가서 에 주저 ADC 게트라고 지나 ADC 게트 나오는 컴바 샤바다 chanjusen 줄라 제보다 티바치몰 나오는 지사 수바다 고 나온 시자로 간다. 고 나온 야 컴바지는 컴바 고 나온 뽑아다. 내가 이디신 컴바 누구나 레차다. 와 레차. 단 누구나 레차데 단 누구나 림바기 데 산지 주고 해서 데바디야. 나 디포르레 티슨 그래요. 나 산지 주고 잘라 레바이나 나 산지 차지. 와 먼저디야. 산지 주고 잘 레차라 산지. 다 디 get 고 나온 야 컴바 뽑아다 나온 레차. 와 오 데나시. 와 다 생기기 줄라 레차디 토차디 아 그바침뭐 transit 그바침뭐 가서 차사.
So he says, whenever this has arisen in the mind, and even though, so whenever this has arisen in the mind, even though nothing else has arisen, one is considered a Mahayanist. So one has entered Mahayana, or the great vehicle. So it's just, so this Bodhichitta is like the entrance, or is like the gateway. It's like the gate. So if you generate Bodhichitta in your mind stream, then you have entered the gate, or you have entered the entrance. So you have you reach the compound of a Mahayana, or the great vehicle. So just like LDC. So if you step your feet in step your feet in the gate. So across the gate, then if you put one step in the compound of LDC, then you have already entered LDC, right, or entered LDC. So until you reach the Buddha Shakyamuni statue, then it's still some steps for you to some distance for you to go, right? So similarly, so once you have generated bodhicitta in your mind stream, then you have already entered the great vehicle, or Mahayana. So if you continue to practice, then you will reach the state of enlightenment. So similarly, if we go for a run, then like 100 meters, then there is a line, right? There is a starting line. So if you one step across the white line, then you have already started the journey.
Oh, there is that. That change say, Julia Chetsari, the Tipa Chimbo Chazare. That change say that, yeah, part of Ina. Change say that, Tony Tang is in Jigi Tandarape. That Sinji Chanju say Julia Chetsano, that Sinji Kaji Jabang Yamba, Raminazo, you go it. Sapena Jabang Payabu, Katichina, Sijabang Yamba, Shibu, anything more. Ha, Yabuchina, Sijabang Yamba Chini. 근데 저리 lonja 소다나 들이 제운이 마무리 신지기 저발때 린잠다 이거 다 근데 왕이야 같이 장주기세 당부지를 지니 다 가와가 미신지기 된다 자원이 두두사 말해서 장주기세 동도하는 들이 오래 좋아 근데 동바이나 다 마동는 마 되면은 마동는 인디페 레네오게 마 장주신바 레네오게 이와라 징게 요래 수도 지고 당부서 세 통을 지를 징게 되니 좋아 마 니와라 레네오게 니와라 징게 요래서 with this is that this Chanju say the mat to the Chanju say Jatsana, they can that Tipachimun mat Bisana Chilopa Transan that get now and to your mat, get now matters.
Yeah, so once a bodhicitta arisen in your mind, then one has become a Mahayanist, and one has become a Mahayanist. So once a bodhicitta arisen in our mind, and when we meet with some situations, like for example, you do something good to others, and however some people then they behave very badly, then even though you benefited them, but they repay your kindness with repay your kindness with by harming you and etc. Then if at that time then you think that I cannot benefit, I cannot work for the welfare of sentient beings, then you lose your bodhicitta, or you abandon your bodhicitta, then one has fallen from being a Mahayanist. So one has fallen into to become a Hinayanist. So once bodhicitta arisen in our mind, we become a Mahayanist. So once we lost this bodhicitta, then we become a Hinayanist. So this is like, just now we say that once bodhicitta arisen in our mind, then we entered the gateway, we crossed the gate, right? Then we entered inside. So if we lost it, then we have already left the gate. So we left, or we come out from the compound of the LDC, for example.
That is the Kanda, also Tipa Chimbo, he made the Chanju say the Roa, Chanju say him Jason Roa, or Tipa Chimbo, you made the Chanju say him Jason Roa. Also, Pomban Jitango, Tipa Chimbo Zigu about that. Native Dutch about the Soviet Pomban Jitango, Toba, TJ Papa, the Chipa Chinioma. TJ Papa, Pomban Jitango, native Dutch about Taro to it. Pomban Jitango to it. Pomban was to a Chipa Yoma. Yoma. Inaya, Tibetan would see what you say, that Chanju say, Yelava. That Chanju say the Ganamazo, that Jelma, Eleva, Chanju say the Julia Chiolanazo, that Jundu Manga Dingun, Lord Jana, Daginanji Gun, Lord Jana, Roa. Jundu Manga Dingun, Lord Jana, that Jawashambang, the Dunjamu to Janama to Sungua. That Jundu Manga, Daginanji Gun, that Lord Jana, Jessica Mushola, was changing to Selma to Sungua. That is my jail, liberal jail.
Yeah. So whether one is a Mahayanist or not, it depends on whether it depends on in whose mind whether bodhicitta present or not, or present or not. So it's not to become being a Mahayanist is not determined by whether you have direct realizations of emptiness or not, because in terms of direct realizations of emptiness, so that which exists in the that which exists in the mind stream of hearers, or that which exists in the teaching ki papa teaching ki papa seguro teaching papa la nyenjo da jumaro. That's right. Yeah. So that which exists in the Arya Mahayanis, so there is no difference. So direct realizations of emptiness do not differ. Do not make a difference whether one is a Mahayanist or Hinayanist. So it depends. It determined by whether in the mind stream whether the bodhicitta present or not. So yeah. So then later we are going to talk about how to generate a bodhicitta. So later we are going to talk about it. So there are in brief, there are two ways to generate bodhicitta. So one is 7 cause and effect by Lama Abdisha, and the second way is equalizing and exchanging oneself with others by Shantideva mentioned in Bodhicitta Avatara.
Chanju say the Ganda Chanju Jingle to so the Saint Jamata the Jayces and Gurese to so do Jesse Saint Jamata. That Chanju sing the Saint Gila Jodi, that Jayce to Chanju and Gurese. That shall be number of and daughter of my patient. She would say the Chanju say the Zachin.
So just like entering the Bodhisattva way, Bodhicitta Avatara by Shantideva says that as soon as this mind has arisen, you become a child of the victors, or you become a child of the Buddha.
That shall be number of and do Maso the Doji to the Doji Rinpoche, Tangas have been missing Zachin Buruan, Doji Rinpoche charges city Cheba the Papa Tanchi City to the Resua, that is Sebondua, that Doji Rinpoche near to Gomaris, and the Ubuda is Soma do to the Resua.
So child of the, and then in Life of Maitreya, it says, child of the lineage is like this. For example, even a broken precious diamond outshines all gold jewelry, however refined. So it doesn't lose its name, diamond, and still averts all poverty.
That needed around Sanji, Yindi City, Tangi, Sujination. The changes in the Mia to Mariese, that needed around Sanji Kanga, Roa, and needed around Sanji Kanga, the Sijineva. The changes in the Mia to Mariese, that's changes in the Gila, that changes in the Chasa. 차차디 this 담아봐 리치 시기는 그래서 와
Then is a metaphor for the second sentence, child of the lineage, likewise, the precious diamond, that is the mind generation from nations, even without effort, outshines all the gold jewelry, that is the excellent qualities of the Sravakas and Pratyekabuddhas. The name Bodhisattva is not lost, and all the misfortunes of cycle existence are averted.
당 거의 우와 단지의 넘버도 그것을 간다. 우와 단지 때 장주 쓰는 거 줄여지 때 도는 예서와 이 도는 거래 때 간다. 다 디요차디 수수기 때 년에 쥐바 간디 길 제바이나 때 간다 피해 전부 신나 만다지 예서 장주 쓰는 요바이나 때로와 장주 쓰는 요바이나 때 수수 니 크데나 그래서 사는 거예요. 간다. 로와 칼라상 니가라 니자 요리서 간다. 간다 가서 배샤바이나 뒤서 이런 식으로는 주진이 시대시는 거와 주진이 시대시는 장주기 쓰기 여차리 때 동바 여다 장주기 쓰기 여차리 때 예자다 니 필요 주실 것만에 필요 와
동바는 양창신
뭐 장주시 나 간다 장주시 같은 대가를 와
Yeah, so once Bodhichitta has arisen in one's mind, in one mind stream, then all the misfortunes of cycle existence are averted. So basically, if we have generated this bodhicitta, so even when we are sleeping, we accumulate roots of virtue. So when we're eating, then we accumulate roots of virtue. So basically, if we have generated bodhicitta, we accumulate virtue for 24 hours.
당어도 디골 디시고다 가지고 장주기 쓰는 최대 티바치비 최이자 가서 강자도 티바치비 제가 마치바이나 이야 장주기 쓰는 줄을 마치바이나 티바치고 장도 치고요 최시야 된 가서 장주기 쓰는 거 티바치비 최차다 와 티바치고 때 요도메도 차도 그래 이 ஞான이지 때 줄을 마치바이나 티바치고 장도 치고요 와 되게 순상 가서 최대바 전부 최이나 때 지라 제바지 주마이나 때문에 대바 전부 잡으면 최대바 전부이나 대란 년에 제바도니 대바 전부 저도 그 지고요. 와. 그때 년이라도 무슨 지야마도 야 대바 전부 저렇게 지고요.
Yeah. So if that mind exists even in someone untrained in bodhisattva conduct, he is said to be a bodhisattva. Therefore, it is not sufficient for the Dharma to be Mahayana Dharma, but rather it is important that the person has entered the Mahayana. So in other way of saying this is, it is important for the person to generate bodhicitta, because generating bodhicitta is the gateway to Mahayana. So it is not sufficient just to talk about bodhicitta, which is teaching of Mahayana. So we have to practice it, and then until we generate bodhicitta in one's mind stream, then we are not a Mahayanist. We are not part of a Mahayanist. Therefore, it is very important to practice so it's very important to practice it, then put effort in practicing it, and then until bodhicitta generates in one mind stream, then we become a Mahayanist. So it's not just talking about a Mahayana teaching, not just talking about bodhicitta, which is a Mahayana teaching. It's very important for the person to become a Mahayanist. Yeah, so I'll stop here. So
it's just one sentence, if you don't mind, Geshe-la. Can I have this one sentence here? Someone untrained in the Bodhisattva conduct, meaning this person doesn't practice. So Geshe-la said must practice. How can he be a Bodhisattva?
So ini di kasa ini di sim di yowai na ini di jang sim ki coba di yang ni macewai na ini yang di jang sim pada caca roy lah jang sim di kula kita na ini di jang sim ki di jang kasa coba di yora jang sim ki yang ni tapi ini di yang ni macewai na jang sim ki coba di yang ni macewai na ini yang jang sim pada caca roy ini di jang sim ki coba di yang ni macewai na jang sim pada di caca resa.
Jadi coba nani majina change simba di chake no.
Ini di kasi di sim di kasi change ki sim di gula kita na. Any the Chang Sim Semba Juba Diora, Ma Jangwaina, the team Nangula. The Chang Sim Juba team, Ma Jangwaina, any and Chang Semba the Zio or Isla.
다 자시 제바 냐네고도 제마 저들이 이거로 냐네 지야도 자시 제바 냐네도 제고 여르게 다 냐네고도 제마 저들이 이거로 자시 제바 냐네고도 제고 와 네 이거야 생각도 제바 여르스 냐네고도 마지막에 참주 생각 여르스 자시 제바 와
going to QA and then going to my QA. So anything has 장인을 나다보라.
민주주의 제바라. 제바 주바스 지금 냐네 제바나 자시 제바 냐네고도 제바 그거래. 다 멤버스 제도 그거 뭐 제바 그거 뭐. 이제 장주의 멤버스 제도 냐네고도 제바 그거 뭐. 자시 제바로 와. 제바 냐네 샤워는 제바 그거 뭐.
샘디 요아이나 디 같은 건도 막 요아이나 대한 장주 샘바디 차.
그거 말에 가서 냥샤바 간가래로 와. 장주 샘바 냥샤바 간가를 때 냐네고도 제바 돼요 말에.
Yeah. So the whole sentence is if that mind exists, so even in someone untrained in a bodhisattva conduct, he is said to be a bodhisattva, right? So for example, those who have aspiring bodhicitta, so they are a bodhisattva conduct, they do not actually engage in the bodhisattva conduct yet. However, they are still a bodhisattva, right? So for those who have already generated the aspiring bodhicitta. So, however, for those who have generated the engaged bodhicitta, then they actually or directly engage in the bodhisattva conduct. So even though they do not actually engage in the bodhisattva conduct, it doesn't mean that they are not bodhisattvas. So when these minds has a reason, then they are for example, aspiring bodhicitta, then they are considered a bodhisattva. Yeah, so later we are going to talk about this aspiring bodhicitta and engaged bodhicitta, whether they directly or not directly engaged in the bodhisattva conduct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So stop here. We do dedication. Yeah, so similarly, our meditation on emptiness now is only in a brief way. So in the future, I will gradually increase the length of meditations on emptiness. So we dedicate the roots of virtue accumulated, especially to these Dhamma discussions, may be a complete cause for the flourishing of the Dhamma, and may be the complete cause for the happiness of all sentient beings as well. So we also dedicate these roots of virtue for all the Buddhas, for all the upholders of the Buddha's teachings in all 10 directions, represented by His Holiness Dalai Lama. May they live long with good health, and may their enlightened activities spread to all 10 directions. And we also dedicate specifically these roots of virtue to our beloved teacher, Kyabje Lama Soparam Rinpoche. So may Rinpoche's live eons long, good health, and may his manifest illness be pacified immediately, and may his holy wishes be accomplished instantaneously. And we also dedicate these roots of virtue for the world peace, and may happiness prevail the world. May the world be free of wars and conflict. We also dedicate these roots of virtue to those who pass away, and especially those who pass away in war or conflict.
Doggy Genius or the Giwan, the Tiano, Guna, Gambetta, Chiva,
Jizu Losan Dawa, Tembe Nibo Rendo Seje, Jo, Janju Senjo Rimboje, Maki Pana, Kiku, Jikipa, Yama, Mebaya, Kondo Bewa, Jo, Jambi Bawi, Chita Kimba, Dankundo, Sambo, De Andejin, De Taku, Jesu Dalo, Jekiwa, Dida, Tamche, Rabdo, Mo, Tongi Tawa, Rimboje, Maki Pana, Kiku, Mebaya, Gone, Kondo Bewa, Jo, Rimi Tawa, Rimboje, Maki Pana, Kiku, Jikipa, Yama, Mebaya, Kone Kondo Bewa, Jo, Tuzi Janji, Jangu, Gebe, Tenzing, Bebe, Kuzo, Dobo, Zechusun, Kue, Lemon, Tujuba, Taso, Tuje, Kundu, Shate, Jo, Jesun, Tujube, Lao, Chise, Suse, Kanchen, Jindu, Chana, Pemo, Tenzing, Gachola, Soa, Deso, Shendu, Jo, Jo, Kande, Pende, Maluba, Kale, Joe, Sambe, Shino, Katin, Sume, Tenzing, Gachola, Soa, Deso, Tuje, Jo, Jo, Rawe, Koe, Shima, Dependa, Dewa, Malu, Jume, Chere, Zewan, Tenzing, Gazoe, Shape, Site, Padu, Tengu, Ji.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Geshe-la. Thank you, everyone.
For those of you who want to attend Lama Zopa Rinpoche's oral transmission of Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga and also retake your refuge or take your new refuge, please click on that. If you're panelists, please change to your name. Some of you are panelists, so change to your real name. So we start at 6. Let's pray it happen because internet is unstable, but let's pray for it to happen. Thank you very much. See you at 6 o'clock or earlier.
Thank you, Geshe-la.
Thank you, Geshe-la.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Chen. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Geshe-la. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Geshe-la. Thank you, Ken.